Good morning, folks. Today we're going to be working on a Ford. That's pretty common. It's a Ford. So this one's got all kinds of lights. This little guy, has he got melting tires? I don't know. Nope, that's traction light. But then you got all the messages in here that pop up, say that there's all kinds of faults everywhere, and your ABS light, even let's go back. This pops up. You have none of your surround cameras like Fords have. Of course, the screen is not doing that in real life. So let's see what codes we got stored in here, which I've already done a full system scan, and everything is showing lack of communication or loss of communication, something to do with the ABS. So we'll go right into the ABS and see what code we have here. This was also a complaint with a noise, which I technically haven't exhibited or heard the noise, so I'm not 100%. The individual did say that it sounded like he was dragging a mailbox. He did send me a video. I really couldn't hear it. I did hear maybe a little bit of screeching noises in the video, but definitely not something that sounded like a mailbox being dragged. He did say he only heard it one time, but it was enough to be of concern, along with all of these lights and messages that popped up. Let's see what code we have in here. This thing takes a minute to load. There we go. So right front wheel speed sensor. All right, well, let's go to live data and let's see what the right front wheel, if it's actually reading. I'll get in here. We'll select the left one too, that way we have something kind of to compare it to. Left front and right front. All right, let's just see those two by themselves. Okay, let's go. Well, it's definitely reading, but if you can see that, it keeps dropping like almost 10 mile an hour slower than the other side, and then it comes back, which it definitely shouldn't do that. Let's get back and see if we can't see anything going on there. Okay, so you saw the codes. Test drove it. Everything was pointing to the right front wheel speed sensor, which we looked at the harness, we followed the wires. It goes down into the HUD down there, which was good. We followed it up to the electrical connector under the hood, which it's plugged in and good. Even turning it seems okay, but let's actually check to see what is really going on here. And watch this.
Uh-oh.
Bruh.
All right, so let's see what all is going to be necessary to get this bearing out, which it's a hub assembly. I already took the wheel off, and this is a 4-wheel drive unit, so it does have an axle shaft that goes into the back of the hub bearing. There should be 4 of these, one here, one on the other side on the bottom, and yeah, there's one there and over there. So those 4, and the hub comes off. These vacuum lines here are part of the engagement of the 4-wheel drive that go into this collar. We'll see if we need to do anything with that, but all the brakes on this side need to come off. So the caliper bracket, and the rotor. Really, you don't need to unbolt the caliper from the bracket because we're not doing anything with the pads. He still has plenty of thickness there, so we don't need to mess with those. We can just take these 2 bolts. There's one up here and one down here off that hold the bracket, the caliper bracket on. Those 2 are 21mm, which was the same as the lug nuts. So we'll take those off and get that set over. Alright, so I got the 2 21mm out, and it's, you know, till they've never been out, it still has the factory Loctite on it. You will want either a long breaker bar or a long ratchet if you don't have air for an impact, because these bolts, they're super tight. And yeah, make sure you don't have your elbow up against anything, so when it breaks loose, you don't smack the fender or the knuckle or anything, because that'll probably hurt. But so we have more room to get this out of the way. The brake line is retained right here to the knuckle with this 10mm. I'm going to pull this off, and then since we have the caliper and the bracket on here, and it's pretty heavy, I don't want to leave it all just hanging by the brake hose. We're going to use this little strap, and we'll rig it up to get it hanging. We're also going to take this little 8mm out. That's a retainer for the wheel speed sensor electrical harness, which does run up into there, and we'll show you where the plug is once we get there, but I'm going to take that off too. Alright, so got the caliper retained up there with a strap, the caliper and the bracket. Pulled that 10mm off that was holding that bracket there for the brake line. I put the bolts back in, that way they don't run away, and I know where they go. You know, kind of a good practice. Also, this little 8mm that was holding this wheel speed sensor harness on, got it out of the way for now. It's not, the strap is kind of covering some of that stuff. It's not really going to cause too much of a problem there. The next thing to do is to get this rotor off. Of course, it's loose now, but they're, you know, always driving in weather, getting wet, whatnot, hot, cold, and they get a lot of grime in there, rust builds up, and most times they won't just slide off. So a little bit of persuasion, the bigger hammer, you'll just hit on the face of this hat, usually towards the bottom and up top. Definitely do not hit these if you're not a really good shot and you're good at hitting everything other than what you're trying to. Don't hesitate to put the lug nuts back on, right? That should help prevent you from smashing these threads down, because you go and start beating on these threads, well, you'll end up replacing the studs too, because you won't be able to put your lug nuts back on. So anyhow, I already smacked on this a little while, and it's loose, so let's take it off and show you what's back here. Yeah, see, there's a little bit of rust in there. We'll take the wire wheel in there and get that all cleaned up. That way that mating surface for the new hub will be clean. And here is where the wheel speed sensor goes in. But this essentially is still part of the hub. Behind this cap here is going to be a bolt that holds the axle shaft here that goes through to the hub or the wheel bearing assembly. But yeah, I mean, this was about ready to come off. They got a little lucky. I'm surprised it's not making more noise than it was. But we'll go ahead and get this pulled off and show you the bolt that's back there. So there's most likely a specific tool that you can buy if you'd like to grab a hold of that and pull it off. I just used this flathead screwdriver and at an angle went around with the hammer and tapped on it while I was prying back, get it to come loose, and then it just pops right off. And then it, you know, rolls around, but that's okay. We got it. It's essentially just a dust cover. And to put it back on, you can just tap it back on with the hammer, but it's to protect any dirt and debris from getting in there, because there is some bearing in there, and you don't want too much of the outside elements getting in there. So now we'll pull this off, that little bitty bolt, and then we still need to get, like I said, these 18s here, here, the same thing on the other side there. So there's 4 that hold the this whole hub assembly in. You can actually see the back of the bolts right here where they pass through the knuckle into this hub assembly. Down there, there, same thing right there. So let's get that off. Alright, got that off. It is a 13. It's also a locking nut, so it does have, looks like probably a little nylon in there, or it's just some Loctite. You can see that loose. That's not the threads, that's part of it being a lock nut. Got it off. We'll just set it down here in the cap, and then see, I can push that in and watch the axle move while I push on it. See, so that is that little bitty nut and that stud are holding the axle in. So we'll get the 18s for the hub now, pull that off, and then of course we will end up having to run up, and let me do that right now. Let me show you where that unplugs. So like I was showing you, the actual electrical harness does this is the dust shield that's behind the rotor. We'll unbolt it. Looks like an 8 and an 8, another 8 down there. That should come off where we can get the wire out. We don't need to take it off the hub because the new hub should come with it, but we do need to be able to get that out from behind there. And it runs here. Like I said, it had that 8mm in it. Behind the little strap here, it's got a little tab. You can just get behind there with a flathead or a trim tool and pry that out. It runs up just multiple little, you'll just follow it up, and there's little clips. The new one should come with new little clips, so if these break, no worries. But then it goes up on the other side of the wheel liner underneath the hood. We'll go there. All right, so the battery, we're on the passenger side under the hood, and looking down there you can see the ground through the harness, these wiring harnesses. but this here, zoom into it a little bit for you. Right there, that's the electrical harness that comes up from down below and plugs in right here. So it's got a little red safety tab, which that little red tab right there will actually pop up. All right, so you see it's now slid up. I use this little flathead and just got in between there and just twist it, which slides it up. And you'll just push that white button right there down and separate the two from each other. And there we go. Got it separated, and I can just shove it down there below, and it's ready to come off with the hub now. All right, I've pulled these 3 8mm bolts out of this dust shield, and it just slides right off. I'll set that out of the way, and now you can see again the knuckle. I've got the harness for the speed sensor that goes into the hub. It's all pulled out from going up into the engine bay, and it's clear. Everything's clear. So once I get these bolts that are on the back side here, these 18s off, I should be able to get the hub off. Let's get these 18s out. All right, so I got all the bolts out all the way around, and this one usually you got to tap on them a little bit. Sometimes you got to put on some vehicles quite a bit of force, or send pry bar or anything down between here, but this one I was just able to rock it back and forth with my thumb on the front of the axle and pulling on the hub itself, and it came right out. So you'll see in here there's a little seal there, and it's got these gears, whatnot. That all goes in there, which you want to try and keep it as clean as possible to the axle, and that seal is also what helps keep it vacuum, because the 4-wheel drive on these actually is controlled again by these vacuum hoses right there that go down into that collar. They come inside here. So let's get the new one out. Let's see, we'll go ahead and clean this off as well. There's quite a bit of rust on this, which has to come from the hub, because this should be aluminum and it shouldn't have rust. But let's get the new hub and compare them. All right, so there they are side by side, which you really can't tell. This one has absolutely no movement in it at all. That one has what looks like a little bit here, but it was a lot with the wheel and everything bolted on. And like I was saying, it does come with the new ABS sensor harness with all the little clips. So if you broke any of the other ones coming out, no big deal, because, well, you're not using them anyhow. And of course, earlier I was talking about when you have to smack the face of the rotor to get it off. If you hit these threads, you'd be in trouble because you may not get the lug nut back on. Well, the new hub does come with new studs, so if you are replacing the hub and you end up having to hit the rotor with a hammer to get it off, and you hit those old ones, not a big deal, because you're going to have new ones. But any other things, any other reason that you're taking that rotor off and you're not replacing this hub, yeah, if you smack these, it's not a good deal. So we're gonna get some towels, kind of cover up some of the stuff here, because we're gonna clean this out here, and really don't want a bunch of junk getting in there all over the axle or the gears in there. It'll probably cause some problems, probably make some noise. So yeah, we got that in there. That ought to work. And just got a little red roll-lock disc on the DeWalt drill. Just knock this stuff off here. Give it a clean mating surface. So we'll go around and get all that cleaned off. And you know, it's probably not a great idea to have the brand new hub right below it. So we'll get that moved too. And we'll get all that cleaned off, and I'll be back in just a second. Alright, we got our mating surfaces all cleaned up. Nice and shiny. Put a little thin coating of new grease in here on the shaft and the gears. Same thing on the new bearing and around the seal, just to help it go in and not roll. Everything go on properly. And of course, you want to make sure when you put this hub in, that you put it in with the wheel speed sensor facing upwards, the way it came out. That way everything lines up properly. Let's get this put on. Alright, we've got it set in there. Got all the bolts started by hand. I'm going to go in and tighten them down, but a little at a time. So I'm going to start tightening this one, and then I'll go down here and I'll get this one, come up here and get that one, go down here and get this one. And I'll kind of keep working in that pattern to try and make sure it comes down flat, level. You don't need anything sideways or get any threads messed up, stuff of that nature. So let's go ahead and get it tightened down now. Alright, got them all tightened, got it sucked down. Gonna get the dust shield put back on, run the harness back up where it's supposed to go. Essentially, I'm gonna reverse what you've already seen. So we'll get everything put back on here, and we'll pick back up on the test drive. Alright, got the wheel and everything put back on. Let's hop in here, and this code that was in the ABS cleared out. We'll get that erased, and then we'll go test drive it. I don't know why I'm reading codes. I definitely don't need to read them. I already know the code that was in it. So we'll just get back to erasing it. Let's go in here and let's erase. Yes, yes. Okay. How many miles we got? 143. All right. Of course, the brake light's on because I have the parking brake set, but no instrument cluster going wacko with all the different malfunctions and failures. No ABS light on. So we'll get over here and get this set on live data, and yeah, we'll get picked back up once we get on the road. All right, let's see what happens here. So far, we're staying pretty consistent. That right one, which is the bottom one on the screen, is not dropped out more than 10 miles an hour like it was before. And last time it was showing like more than 10 miles an hour difference than the left side was. So I think so far so good. I think we're going to call this one a fix. I'm going to go ahead and get this out on the main road and do a little bit of drive and put some miles on it. Make sure that we don't have anything come back, anything new come on. So do now, and of course, to be safe, I'm not gonna hold the camera and drive at the same time. So I'll be back shortly, and we'll see if it's completely done and good to go. All right, made it back. No lights on. All good. I don't know, I probably drove it about 3 or 4 miles if you want to do the math on the odometer. Watched the live data the whole time, and yep, the speeds on both front and I even looked at the rear. They all match. They all stayed within spec of each other. Everything's good on this now as far as his crazy messages on the dash, the fault lights that he was having with the ABS, which was triggering everything else. So now we'll just give it a once over. He's concerned about 150,000 miles, so we'll look at shocks and suspension components, which they all looked good. The brakes were still looking good. Some fluids, maybe spark plugs, stuff of that nature. But as far as the main problems, they're all good. They're all done. So we'll call this one complete, and we'll move on to the next one. See ya.